Well, we've just seen the film, The Definition of Insanity, and we're here in a Zoom session with many members, attendees of the conference, and also with Justin Volpe, who was a participant in the film. You saw him as the peer support specialist
Well,
in the film.
just seen the film, The Definition of
Oh,
Insanity,
now and
and
I
we're
need to turn
here
down
in
my
a
own.
Zoom session
Well, we've
with
just seen the
many
film,
members,
Definition of
attendees of the
Insanity,
conference,
and we're
and
here in
also
the
with
people to
Zoom session
turn
with
down the
many
volume of the
attendees of
YouTube.
the conference, and also with Justin Volpe, who was a participant.
Eben, can you mute everyone's microphone?
You saw him film as the peer support specialist in the session
We'll
with
get this sorted out in a moment,
members,
folks.
attendees of the conference, and also with Justin Volpe.
Thank you.
Any sides, any.
So it's a big Zoom meeting and a little chaos, but that's part of the deal. Justin, welcome. Thanks for staying up late with us.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And you're in Miami now?
Yeah, East Coast time. Sun's
Well,
still out a little bit, so we still got a little daylight left, maybe for a few more minutes.
we just got to see Definition of Insanity, many of us for the first time. You played a big part of this. Did you recognize during the filmmaking that you would be such a big part of this film?
No, I mean, I just worked there forever. I worked there for 14 years. So when the whole opportunity to film the work came about, we didn't know kind of how it was going to turn out. And I think it portrayed things pretty well. And needless to say, it couldn't portray everything that it's like to experience being in the community and some of the situations that we encounter or that people in the system encounter.
And how long did the filming take that you were participating with?
I want to say a few years on and off because Gabriel London, one of the producers, he lived in New York, so he would fly down and have a crew in Miami. I would say every few months we'd film a little bit, or he'd stay for a little bit, but it wasn't like we just shot continuously straight through. So I want to say it was broken up over 2.5, almost 3 years. And I could be off a little bit on that, but it was a while. It wasn't just a straight shot.
Took a long time to make it happen. And you see the evolution of your clients and other people in court during that process. So if folks, this is meant to be interactive. So if folks have questions for Justin or want to make comments about the film, I'll ask a few more questions, but put your hand up if you have a question, we'll get to you. Also, just a reminder for folks now that more people are in the meeting, this meeting is being recorded. If you don't want to be recorded or you don't want to participate in a recorded session that will be available to attendees to watch later, you probably need to leave now and watch this, which is happening right now on YouTube. It's being played here in the Zoom room and on YouTube. So
Yeah,
Justin,
there was a comment to turn the YouTube volume down, maybe so you don't hear the repeat of the voices. Is that what you need to
that's what
do?
it says. Thank you, Kimberly. And
Yes.
that's important. So we're on a little bit of a delay here. Justin, tell me a little bit about your experience in the aftermath of this film. How has it affected you?
Well, when the film opened, it opened in the Miami Film Festival in 2020, a week before the pandemic happened. So when the film came out, we were ecstatic, and it was a monumental time to see something of our life's work in the community, um, be put on screen like that. But after it came out, everything shut down. So it kind of sat for a little bit, and it's really starting to make its rounds again after the whole pandemic issue. But it's affected me. It's given me some opportunity to talk about the film. I've obviously shared it far and wide, and I'm glad I got to be a part of it.
And
I,
can you tell us
yeah.
a little bit about your background and how you got to this position of being a peer support specialist?
Well, what's not seen in the film my prior struggles with substance use and serious mental illness and in and out of different systems. And that led me to, you know, being incarcerated in 2007 before my time of employment there. And the same program, which you saw in the film, gave me a chance to get out of jail and access treatment and help turn my life back around. And after I got my life turned back around after 8 months in the community, because I had lost everything, Jason, I had lost jobs, I had lost my apartment, lost everything. It's like, I don't know if you ever heard a country music song, you lost your dog, your girl ran away, like everything's not going for you. And then, I find recovery and things start coming back, life starts getting better. And they offered me a job at the jail diversion program. And I went from having an open felony case to becoming a county employee within 8 months. And, they took a chance on me. They hired somebody with a criminal background, and the job put me in service, and it helped me as much as it helped other people navigate the system that I had just been in. And it was a truly humbling experience over the 14 years I stayed there.
So, folks, we have Justin Volpe here from the film that everyone's just watched, Definition of Insanity. If you have a question for him, you can put it in the chat or you can raise your hand and we'll get it answered. Justin, first question is in the chat. And the question is, what do you wish the system had offered or provided before your illness was criminalized? What could the system done for you?
I fight for things like that today on a national level because I'm no longer at the jail diversion program. But people should have, it should be as easy to get help as it is to get a burger at a fast food restaurant in this country. And it's really sad that people aren't given that chance. And although my story is remarkable, it's unfortunately doesn't happen to a lot of people, and a lot of people end up incarcerated over and over again, rehospitalized, because the system has cracks and people are falling into them, and people aren't afforded the chance of recovery or different avenues, different pathways. So let me go back to the question. So,
Talk
what do
about
I wish the system offered me?
yeah.
I would just say, honestly, I needed somebody to talk to about I was experiencing mental health symptoms, but I also had a lot of trauma. And when I
Mm.
tried to explain my trauma to mental health providers, they wrote it off as delusions and mental illness when there was some of that going on, but there was some real things in my life that I wanted to talk about. So I think somebody that understands the trauma-informed care approach and really just wanted to hear my story and to see where I was at and to validate my experiences instead of, just throwing away the key. I think
This
that
is one of
active
the
listening. Yeah.
this is one of the most optimistic parts of our system right now is what we're learning and teaching each other about trauma. Prison and homelessness, people don't walk away untraumatized. Was that your experience in seeing people in the court system that they were heavily affected by trauma as well?
Yeah, heavily affected and unaware. So beaten down by the system. And then, when you're affected by trauma so much and you can't even trust people that maybe want to help you because the system's failed people so many times. So when people do offer their assistance, there may be some hesitation or distrust. And when we put people in treatments and give them options that may not be culturally relevant or to fit what they're going in, because we can't fit everybody in three boxes, and then you're also going to have failure there too.
Hmm. Now, you started out your working with a felony and with a mental illness, and you found a way to become a peer support worker. Talk a little bit about the that experience of becoming a peer support worker. Why did you decide that was the right thing for you to do?
Well, the thing was is that they offered me the job. I didn't necessarily want to become one. I closed my court case and I left the courthouse and they called me back into the office and they offered me the job. And I don't know. They're like, yeah, come on, you could be a county employee. I had no idea what it entailed. And the whole program with the court, we were literally building the ship as we were sailing it, as they say. And there was a huge learning curve for myself and everyone I worked with.
That must have been an amazingly weird experience to go from one side of the dais to the other side.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I had to learn how to navigate systems and build my voice to advocate for myself and others, and try to heal at the same time, because being still early on in recovery, there was still a lot of challenges.
Now we're out in here, most of us are out here in Oregon or California or Washington, and we're very proud of the fact that we're the worst mental health system in the nation. But I don't really think that's true. When I meet people from Florida, they say, oh no, it's Florida. Florida's the worst. Is that the case? What is the situation there now?
Everybody says they're the worst. Everybody's like 53rd, 54th. If you could go lower, you're lower, right? I don't know. As far as statistics, because you read, 10 different reports, you get 10 different findings. But I'm not so I work, so somebody asked in the chat where I work for. I work for an agency in Virginia, and I travel. It's called the National Association of State Mental Health Program Directors. Now I work directly with states and territories to help build and support mental health programs and peer support programs and anything you can think of, not to shorten it, but not to overstate it right now. And I'm still somewhat involved in the community here, but I'm not as hands-on and direct as I was for 14 years. I still do CIT training with officers. I still help out when I can. I still volunteer, but mainly I'm on Zoom like you guys now, and I travel. I just got back from Kansas City last week with a meeting with SAMHSA, and what I hear, what I see in different communities now, because I'm able to see different communities, um, is disparity. It's the same not only in Florida as it is in a rural area across the country and in a big city, is that people uh, are not being served and they're ending up incarcerated, and people are starting to wake up and realize that this is not the way we treat people. So to the preventative question of how do we keep people out, I think it goes to early education, education for families and schools, connecting to treatment, connecting to counselors, connecting just to peer support, to help support our youth before they have to get in those situations, and work and employment and meaningful education. I mean, it's all part of it, right? It's a bigger picture, and we all kind of play our part.
Now, no system works well for everyone. Were there certain sorts of people or phases of individuals' lives which worked better or worse in this court system we see in the film?
Is there what? I'm sorry, I'm reading the
Are there
chat.
people who do
Fireball.
better or worse in this sort of court situation?
In my experience, yes, yes. Unfortunately, it's no secret that our judicial system is somewhat biased toward people of color, and I saw a lot of that even in Miami. Judge Leifman wasn't the judge for every case, and
Mm.
people get treated differently. People get treated differently. They get different bond amounts. They get different state attorneys. They get different, and everybody has bias in the system, and this is everywhere. And I think people get better opportunities. I work with somebody at my national job now, and she's incredible. She's an amazing advocate. She also was only arrested one time in her life for a crime that was the result of an addiction. And she, even though only been arrested once, served 13 years in prison because she was half Native American. And I said, well, if you were in a big city like Miami, they'd send you to drug court for a first time offender. But that's just a small example of what it's like when people don't have access to these different kind of specialty courts and treatments. across the country is they're ending up in prison. So that looks different everywhere.
And this court seems to have some ability to be flexible, to be humane, to understand the individual versus just a sentencing order.
You know, you really got to mess up in a place like Miami to go to prison. You really got to do something bad. I mean, you really got to like, and as far as outside of the treatment court aspect, and I think that, people are given opportunities and, despite all that trauma and mistrust, I think the best part of being a peer support was like, listen, you got to run with this. You got to take this opportunity because people aren't afforded the same opportunity to get clean records, to get access to some of these services, right? I've been with families that are wealthy families that have spent hundreds of $1,000s on their children to try to get them access to services, and they ended up in the same court system with a public defender, like somebody just off the street. So it doesn't discriminate. And there's a lot of questions in the chat, Jason. I don't know if you see
Yep.
all these. Yeah.
Yep. So, but we're sort of opening up a little bit more about who you are and what your experience has been.
Hmm.
You're now with the National Association, and are you able to see are you working also about drug and mental health courts there, or are you doing something different and new?
There are some topics that there may be some states that we work with that are dealing with those topics, and I work with other partnering national organizations, but Nashville is my full-time employment. They mostly focus on mental health and we give away money at the part of the program I'm in, and you should tell your people at the state behavioral health office to apply for it at Oregon for flexible funding to start programs, and it could be for a court program as well. And we've seen that happen. But there's also grants through the Bureau of Justice Administration, the BGA, and Policy Research Associates that are doing some great work. And there's now a National Treatment Court um, thing going
And
on. Yeah.
just a reminder of folks, if they have a question, to put it in the chat or to raise your hand, and we'll be able to see it and try to answer it. Justin, were you seeing a question in the chat that you were?
I'm reading Mary's. It says, "Do you mind if I take it, Jason?"
Please do.
I'm sorry. I have monkey brain. Sometimes you're talking to me and then I see questions come in. So I apologize if I look a little distracted.
Yeah.
And it's late here, so I'm getting tired. No. This Mary says, is there any work being done in Oregon State, like outside the community restoration? What happens when the mentor program isn't showing up for people on a peer level? I help run housing for this population, and the regular peer organizations say unless they want to engage, they discontinue services, then they get lost in the system again. That I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but I do because, a peer relationship is supposed to be a mutual relationship, right? So if say someone doesn't want to receive peer services, that would be honor their relationship and they say, they don't want to engage anymore. I would love to connect you with people in Oregon if you don't probably know them. And maybe we could talk that more. I'll drop my email in the chat and maybe we could have a deeper discussion about that.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Justin. One of the questions in the Zoom chat is you've been at this a long time. 14 years is a long time to be a peer support worker. How do you keep yourself healthy? How do you keep yourself from burning out?
I burn out so many times. I had to force wellness on myself. I had to just continually work at taking time to myself, work on my own recovery, and this is just me. This is just my story. Everybody's different. I do things that are fun. I play basketball. I did yoga for a long time. I go to the beach here in Miami. I still talk to a therapist when I can. I try to stay active and try to, but when you're in the trenches of the work, it feels like, and I think a lot of you may work in the same space. It's easier said than done to take that self-help or that wellness. And I had to force it on myself. I would have to take days off or take off early in the afternoon and just say, I've done all I can, you know, and support from your team members, and work with a team that was able to support each other and help each other out. I think that kind of transparency is definitely helps everyone's health.
Let's ask a question about the film. Since it's rolled out, people have been watching this all over the country. It's been on PBS, it's on YouTube. Organizations like this bring it to their constituents. So you've probably been able to talk to a lot of people from around the country, and what's their general response to the film?
Everybody loves the film. I think it's a good film. I think it came out good. I didn't watch it for a couple of years until we did an event in DC in, I want to say January or February, and they screened it a couple nights. And the reception was really good. And it was good to see people's reception because I don't do these things like I have a full-time job. It's not like, they paid me for the film or anything. It's not like my only thing I did. So it's good to see people's responses that they were encouraged when they saw the film. And you know, I'm a bad promoter and have some humility. I'm not like have like the film in like my email signature or anything like that. But it was a good to be a part of it, and it has good memories to look back on my time with the court.
Um, Christine in the Zoom chat asks, how do you, now that this, with all this experience, how do you define success in your role now that you're not doing peer support?
How do I find success now? Success to me, I get to work from home most times, and I get to raise two kids. I get to either pick my kid up at school or drop them off. I get to spend time with them. I get to spend time with my wife. When I worked at the court, I would leave at 7 in the morning, and come home at 7 at night and not see my family and just eat dinner and go to bed because I was so burnt out with the
Mm.
work. And success to me is balance and not taking for granted those little things that like making dinner or even doing the dishes, which I hate, is a privilege. That, when you're working, and I worked multiple jobs throughout the years too, because it's tough out there, right? So I think, the success for me is not necessarily financial because, everything's so expensive. But, just having a little bit of freedom and leeway to just support my family. And, my biggest thing is, having been diagnosed with a serious mental illness is we talk about prevention is to give my kids a better shot at life and education, and help them through the hard times and just be there and be a present father. I think that's success to me.
That's great. It's a very good thing to think about. Again, if folks have questions for Justin about the film or want to make comments about the sessions today, now's the time to do that. You can put your question in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll call on you as we can see you.
I think Palmer had a question. Oh, he asked, or they asked about prevent burnout.
Mhm.
Let's see. Jerry Clark has a message about something in Oregon. It says, I just want to note that he says they were building this program while running it. There is so much pushback in Oregon to build anything until the infrastructure is somehow magically in place. The state has to bust through that inertia and just start with some compassionate problem solving and AOT courts to show what is possible with these evidence-based strategies.
Well, I'll tell you a little story that Norm Ornstein told me before the meeting, the conference started this morning, as we were talking about the film. He said that he and Judge Leitner, and Norm lives in DC, and Norm's a kind of a big character in the DC policy scene, that they came out to Portland, Oregon a year ago and spoke to a big meeting of the governor, the district attorney, the sheriffs, police, the district attorney, mental health system, lots of VIPs in the room, and discussing this process that they're using in um, in Miami, and especially the attached housing. And asked if Norm wanted to ask, well, what's become of this advice that we came and gave? And frankly, nothing has come of it. There's been no response to it at all. We're really compromised by not having any housing. And it seemed like that was a key resource you had with the courts, that there was attached housing. How did that work for you?
And you want to know the truth?
Yeah.
Housing um, was not the greatest options when you talk about recovery housing, when you talk about people living off Social Security checks and trying to be able to afford rent. You're talking about shared housing, sometimes 2 to 4 people to a room.
Hmm.
Um, it was more temporary and transitional. We were able to get people linked up with the homeless trust and into some long-term supportive housing. But again, that wasn't always the outcome for everybody that touched the court system. And obviously, most people that touched the court system didn't have a meaningful income to support themselves on their own. So we had, I would consider some of these homes better than jail, but you and I wouldn't live there, right? I mean, let's just call it what it is. So I mean that's a real thing too, and that's a real problem in cities and even rural areas is what are we diverting to? What are we being released to? Um, Another kind of coercive kind of environment where to some it may feel like there's still someone incarcerated because they don't have levels of freedom. And I want to say Amanda had a question a while ago. I think I'm going in order now. She said, "Do you think you got lucky with getting a job? It's very difficult to get a job when you have a mental illness and a felony. Do you have any ideas for how folks can get themselves to where you are if they are motivated?" I don't know if it's luck, but grace that got me in that position, honestly. But as far as becoming a peer specialist and getting your life back on track, that people can get motivated. And I think that's why peer work is so special, to just, walk the walk and talk the talk with somebody. Um, and it doesn't have to stop at peer work or to work in this field. I mean, not everybody's meant to be a social worker or a case manager or a peer specialist. They can do construction, they can go back to school, they can do culinary, right? There's so many different avenues that even if you had a felony, that there are significant ways to be successful. And I think, when we talked about, you know, linking to services, employment is definitely probably employment and housing has to be some of the biggest so people can sustain themselves.
I'm going to hold on Amanda's next question for a moment and go back to the film and say that the film that really, the moment that touched me the most was when the older gentleman comes in to speak to you and maybe his other case manager and tell him that he's moved out of the housing that you so carefully gotten for him. And you approach it as a completely reality-based problem. It's not his mental illness, it's the practical nature of the space. Could you give us a little more background on what was going on there?
That gentleman I had known for a very long time. Yeah. And if I am wrong, if he's still alive, he's probably still on the street. But somebody was taking either his Social Security or his VA benefits, and he couldn't afford the housing, or there was some issue with that. And I had relationships with people in the community that were able to house people without paying them, which doesn't happen very often, right? To know somebody like that. And I went out and I bought them food and I bought them like a blanket and pillow. and he had his own room, and he left it all. And within a day or 2 days, whatever it was, he came back into the office and said some guy was threatening him in the home, and he just left. And I said, well, you should have told me, because I would have talked to the owner. And, that's just it's tough out there on the street, and if that man didn't feel safe, then he didn't stay. And that's also a reality, is that you may get somebody housing or do a program, and it may not be a good fit. And when you are desperate for housing and to get people out of jail, you don't have a ton of options, right? You don't have a ton of places people can go. So that was a harsh reality of that scene, I think.
It was. It's working with people with mental illness. It's always a reminder that we're not machines. We're not gears that fit together well. Everyone's different. Everyone needs to be respected. Amanda's second question is, if someone were to give you a large amount of money to start up a program like yours in Miami, in a state that doesn't have one, such as ours out here in the West, what would you spend it on first? What would be the first priority?
I'd buy a lot of housing and hire people to compassionate people, um, whatever, people that are trained at working with people, to work at some housing and get people off the street. Because, if you don't have a safe place to lay your head and to access some of these services, you can't just get somebody out of jail, give them a bag of medication, and send them back to the same uh, bad situation and expect a miracle, right? That's pretty illogical. So I play the Powerball when it hits $1 billion all the time. So that's about the only time I play. Um, and that would be my dream. To something, buy a lot of housing and get some kind of network of people to run it. And give, families, everybody that needs it, not just people with mental illness.
Justin, we're wrapping up. Would you give us some final thoughts about where you see us going as a movement, as a problem, as a work in progress into the future?
As a work in progress into the future, as far in what space?
So, in the space of people with psychosis in the criminal justice system, what do you think we should? What does the future look like to you?
Well, the future, I can't say looks promising, but I could say that, sometimes different communities, different states, they have to come to a point where, um, they come to a breaking point, whatever that may be, and that advocates need to stand up and make change for people, that, they should have more options, and people should get education, and to stay out of the being incarcerated. And, like everything we just talked about, what does that look like, the future, what I want it to be, and what the reality of what it is, do not match, right? I think we're all kind of there, but what I would hope it to be, or wish it to be, is that one day that, people don't have to experience what I had to experience, what millions of others in this country have to experience, to have their rights taken away, to lose housing, lose employment, lose family connections because of this. And I just pray that, people don't have to suffer anymore, and that there could be a brighter days ahead.
One more question from our friend Kelly, and it's about peer education. Is there now? Did you go through a peer support program in Miami, or they just grandfather you in?
I went through training in Miami. I went through
And
training. Yeah. Where's the question? Who asked it?
so
I'm sorry.
Kelly Fitzpatrick asked, and the question is, what specific practical education or skills training are peers not getting enough of in
Mhm.
preparation for the work they do in supporting other peers?
I think not only the peers aren't getting enough of, but programs that don't know how to work with peers aren't getting enough of. And everybody wants a peer specialist, and they say peers are going to fix our problems,
Mm.
but especially clinical staff doesn't know how to work with them. And it's not their fault, but there needs to be more education to people that work with peers and supervision so they can make this work out. And as far as what peers didn't, or what I didn't get enough of is I didn't get a lot of training in crisis, and I think that's something that's a paper that we're writing right now. Well, actually, we wrote it, and it's going to be published by SAMHSA hopefully sometime this year, around peers in crisis services and what their roles are be and what that looks like, and just a kind of an education of what it means to be a peer in a crisis situation. And I think having some clear expectations and boundaries for your clients and for your coworkers, and knowing how to navigate some of those nuances.
This has been a great conversation. Thank you, Justin, for coming to speak with us, and thank you for making this film for us. And best of luck in your future.
All right, Jason, thanks so much for having me. Thank you all. I'm sorry if I didn't get your question. Mary, I got your email. I'm going to shoot you an email now. All right. Bye, guys.
And Justin, hold one moment. Can we share your email with other folks?
Yeah, let me put it in the chat if you don't mind.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and you guys can reach out if anything. Hold on.
And folks, I'll have this email address to share with you in the chat tomorrow, in case you don't get it written down.
Use this one, Jason, not the one you sent the invite to me, okay?
Yep.
All right, great. All right, y'all. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank
Take
you so
care.
much. Take
Bye.
care, everybody. We'll see you at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.